This is the time in the celebration service where we share the message or the lesson. I'm going to start with a question. Have you ever noticed how many different shades of green there are? You ever sat outside and really paid attention? You're just walking around, your brain registers green, green grass, and a beautiful green tree. But if you stop and you look, there are different shades of green all around you. And perhaps if you held one leaf in your hand that was green, even in that leaf, the variance of colors would be amazing. You ever noticed when you feel something that is very like those many colors of green? You may label it as something. I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm happy. But if you were to look at that deeper, you'd see all of these different facets or colors along with it. We've been talking lately and certainly feeling lately that we're on the last page of a really fat book. Our last evolutionary cycle looks like it's about this big. It looks like a book of mythic proportion. And what we heard last week from the angels is that we're on the last page. That book is about to shut. And we know it. Maybe we don't articulate it that way, pardon me, but we know that something is changing. And change, even when it's for the best, does not always feel good. Today I want to talk about the variances between sadness, depression, and something called the dark night of the soul. And it's not always fun to talk about sadness and depression and dark night of the soul, but let's think of this as the most beautiful ballet, as a beautiful symphony, the best rock concert you've ever gone to. Let's think of it as art, because you are a work of art. And you deserve to acknowledge all of your colors. Every person created has some empathic ability. We feel what other people are feeling. We feel what the world is feeling. Why? So we can choose to help. We can choose to love and how to love. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes the choice that's best for us is to step back. Sometimes we're not ready to help. Sometimes our bucket is empty and we just choose not to help. But we feel that energy of other people and situations because that energy is infused with data. It's infused with information. And when we feel that around us, our soul takes out that information and has a conversation right within us that sounds like, what am I feeling? What is that? What do I do with that? Makes a plan. You make a plan subconsciously. And sometimes it's conscious. Sometimes you feel energy around you so much that you say in your mind, whoa, this is a lot. This person is exhausting me. Or I want to be around that person. He lights up the room. Right now, as intuitive, spiritual, empathic people, we are feeling a lot. And I'm not really sure how good we are at saying to each other, go ahead and feel it. I was thinking about this week and channeling and asking my loved ones about the idea of sadness. Here's some things that came through. By the way, some of this information is from Psychology Today, the Mayo Clinic, healthline.com, just so you know. Some of it's from my brain, some of it's from the angels, some of it's from my loved ones. Our tendency to avoid sadness is almost instinctive. What? Our tendency to avoid sadness is almost instinctive because it doesn't feel very good. From a very young age, we try to avoid sad feelings. So think about it. How many times can you imagine in your mind somebody shushes a crying baby, or a toddler's having a tantrum and we say, you go sit down until you're done. When they are expressing a very real need, they're expressing a big feeling. How many times do we say, buck up, cheer up, pull up your bootstraps, stand up straight, take on the world, which can work sometimes. But if we say those things all the time, we're building this veneer or this shell that on the outside looks like we are appearing put together, but inside we are cracking, never broken, but we are cracking. I have to be really careful in my life. This is just me speaking about me for a second. That what I put out to people is authentic. Because I like to wear certain clothes. I like to make my hair this way. I like to smile. I put on makeup. And if you were to take a picture of me and put it on Facebook, you might think, wow, that lady's got it together. And sometimes I do. But if you were to take that apart, wash off the makeup, brush out the hair, and look deeper, you would see sadness. I'm sad. And sometimes I'm more than sad. Sometimes I'm depressed and more than that. And maybe like you, I've told myself, well, I don't want to feel that. When is this going to end? And I even try to turn it off by watching a movie or just denying my feelings and getting busy with something else. When we do that to each other and ourselves, we say, don't feel that. Well, thought about this, and it seems like sometimes when we say yes to sadness, it's like we've opened the dam, and we're afraid that the sadness won't stop, that there's more of it. But I don't think we recognize sometimes that, yes, we're opening up a big dam of energy, but it's not sadness that's going to pour out. It's going to be evolution. It's going to be our spiritual selves growing from child to adult, over and over every day, growing from child to adult, from student to teacher and back again. Sadness can be grounding. As I said earlier, I've been really sad lately because I've been feeling stuff in my own life and in the world around me. And the other day, I played some music that helped me cry. And I shut the door, I sat down in the shower, and I just cried. And I cried with my whole body. And I felt better afterwards. I didn't solve anything. I still felt sad. But I let some of that out. It's like the energy had weights to it. And my body was trying to carry those weights. And I was walking around from room to room, place to place, me plus 1,000 pounds. And also, when we're feeling something big, we have a big feeling, our spirit part of us grows. So here's your body, and here's your spirit self growing taller and taller and taller. It is growing. And sometimes our body says, what is happening? And we need to ground ourselves. And crying can do that. Crying can help our physical body and our spiritual body say, oh yeah, I know you. We're going to be okay. I encourage you to be sad. It's okay. It makes sense right now. Yeah, we can talk all day about how there's an evolution coming and there's good stuff happening in the world. We know that. But we are picking up on sadness for a reason. If we skip acknowledging that we're sad, we're going to skip some information. We're going to skip part of the lesson. And so we've got to sit with it. Within our sadness, our stories, there's data, there's information, there's love. And within our sadness, there is joy. Yeah, you can have both at the same time. Be sad. It's okay. You are, beloved, opening up Pandora's box when you are sad. But don't be afraid of that. It is part of the what's next. And in this big fat book that we talked about earlier, that we're on the very last page of, I bet if we looked up how many times sadness came up, it would be a lot. And we might find examples of felt sad, ignored it. Felt sad, worked in the garden instead. Felt sad, went to work. Compartmentalized it. And in this new book, we can feel sad and say, I'm going to sit with that. What is that about? It's a different way to handle it. So give yourself permission, because sadness makes sense right now. Sadness is often mistakenly confused with depression. I jumbled that. Let me say that again. Sadness is often mistakenly confused with depression. So what is it? Sadness or depression? Where sadness has really a known reason. I'm sad because. Depression doesn't always feel like it has a reason. Where sadness has detail, depression is giant, it is abstract. Depression is not a simple condition with a known cause. And some people are more susceptible to depression episodes where others are not. And I bring that up because my depression is not your depression. Yours is not mine. So even when you recognize that someone is depressed, we have to be really careful that we don't project our depression onto them. Everybody's sadness and depression is different. And perhaps our new response is, tell me more. Let me sit with you. I don't know what your depression feels like, but I know mine hurts. How can I help? Depression can be inherited. You could have genetics that have depression written in there. Your ancestors could have suffered from depression and it wasn't called that. Think of your family. Did anybody call it the blues? Might have been labeled, it might not have been labeled. And let me tell you, those ancestors that are no longer in their bodies, they are with you, and they're still learning as well. And I've been shown that as you learn about your depression, because everybody has an element of it sometimes, as you learn about depression, you are healing your ancestors. Wow. You're healing your ancestors. And you are most likely changing the spiritual DNA that will get passed on to the next generation. And what we might be healing is, well, feel better. There's no time for that. Have a sucker. You're sad, have a sucker. You just need to eat. We're not going to talk ourselves out of these things anymore. We're going to own it. So depression may be an inherited condition. You may have a higher likelihood of experiencing a depressive disorder even at some point in your life. Past lives can affect your depression as well. Think about how old you are. This body's young, but your soul is so old and wise. And when you've had trauma, sadness, depression in past lifetimes, the energy of that can be felt right now. It's actually felt around your belly, your lower back area. How many times do you hear little ones say, my tummy hurts, when they can't yet say, I'm sad or I'm angry? because that's where that lives. Sometimes the cause can be biochemical. Some people have noticeable changes in their brain when it comes to depression. And I want you to hear that because we try to explain things away. We try to tell ourselves, I'm broken, or something's not right, I am bad, when it's something chemical in your brain. Neurotransmitters in the brain, specifically serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, affect feelings of happiness and pleasure and can be out of balance if you have depression. There are remedies. There are antidepressants you can take. And I don't know how you feel about prescription medicine. That's not my business, but I will tell you that you chose to incarnate in this time, in this place. And there may be a balance between traditional medicine and holistic medicine. What could that be like for you? Our gut health is so important when we think about depression, because if your healthy bacteria is not where it should be, you're not going to be able to feel joy the way you're supposed to. There will be a block. So things like probiotics are important. Eating foods that have probiotic properties, fermented foods, yogurt, kefir. And raising your vibrational frequency with laughter, music, nature. When you are feeling depressed and you can't put a reason to it, or maybe you can, and nothing seems to be working, well, let's get really technical for a second. What if you had a ball of light, that's your vibrational frequency, right at your belly, right where your body is feeling that depression. And you imagine that spinning around, and with your arms, you just move it upwards. And as that ball of golden sunshine moves upwards, everything it crosses changes, heals, morphs, transmutes. And you go so far as to letting it release above your head. Maybe you do that again. Maybe sitting in a meeting, you can do this in your head. You can raise your vibrational frequency from depression to how you want to feel. There are meditations on YouTube that will allow you to choose what frequency you want to tap into. Is it love? Is it health? Is it prosperity? You can choose that headphones in and sit there and let the music do its work. Sometimes depression is seasonal. We are moving into longer nights and shorter days with more shades of gray than color. As daylight hours get shorter in the winter, many people develop feelings of tiredness. They're lethargic. They lose interest in everyday activities. And sometimes this is labeled as SAD, or seasonal affective disorder. Now it's more known as major depressive disorder with a seasonal pattern. And the condition usually goes away once the days get longer. Well, if that sounds like you, if you feel depression in the winter, you get the winter blues, there's an opportunity there. Once a year, you get the chance to say, oh, right, what is shedding away? What am I feeling? What's the lesson here? You might expect it, not with doom and gloom, not with fear, almost like expecting school starts in August. You may expect that your depression will come when the days are gray, dark, and long. And you can start to plan, what supplies do I need? How will I help myself? How will I love myself? Because whether we're talking about sadness or something deeper like depression, it's part of our evolution, and you can sit with it and figure out, what is this about? What do I do with it? Depression can also be situational. Things happening in our life like, a pandemic can really affect our depression. And if you recognize that you are empathic to the degree that you're feeling collective energy, because there's your energy and there's everybody else's, you might be feeling a lot right now. There are some tools to help you with this. There's a couple of apps I found I wanted to tell you about. One is called Easy Wake. It's a special light alarm that simulates a summer sunrise. So if you feel like you are triggered by darker days, you might try that app. I also found one called Mood Tools. It has several research-supported tools like thought diaries, activities, a safety plan, and a test to gauge the severity of your symptoms. I'm going to give you a list, and I want you just to imagine checking the box if it makes sense to you. Do you feel tired? Do you have trouble focusing or concentrating? Do you feel unhappy? Are you angry? Irritable? Do you experience frustration? Loss of interest in pleasurable or fun activities? Sleep issues? Too much or too little? No energy? Craving unhealthy foods? Anxiety? Restlessness? Worrying? Guilt? Suicidal thoughts or tendencies? Pain? Physical pain? Drug or alcohol abuse? Sadness? Sadness is definitely a symptom of depression. So again, sometimes hard to know the difference. If you check some of those boxes, I want you to say to yourself right now these words: I'm complete and I'm whole. 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 When we're in a depressive state, we often feel numb and deadened to our emotions. We may even have feelings of shame, self-blame, or self-hatred, all of which are likely to interfere with our evolution. So think about what you're feeling. Is it sadness? Do you know the cause? Or is it depression? Do you feel the detail of sadness, or are you floating in the ocean of depression? Well, here's another idea. Have you ever heard of something called the dark night of the soul? The dark night of the soul has a lot of the same attributes as depression. It's actually a stage in your spiritual development, your personal development, when you undergo a difficult and significant transition to a deeper perception of life. You're going deeper. Sadness is here and depression is here. You're deep diving. You're going so far down into the ocean, you've never been there before. You have an enhanced awareness, and it's accompanied by a painful shedding of previous frameworks, ideas, structures. So as you dive deep into this dark night of the soul, what's going to happen is you're going to come out of it. And when you come out of it, you're going to be different. You will evolve. I can't promise you you're going to feel better. I imagine you will. But as you travel, you're shedding stuff. You're shedding what you used to think about something. Maybe that's theology. Maybe that's religion. Maybe it's relationships. Maybe it's ownership you took and you kept from a breakup that really wasn't yours to keep. You are shedding things away. And just like when the snake sheds its skin, it's itchy, it can be painful. The dark night of the soul has various relative conceptions in religion, mythology, and psychology. Better said, you're going to find dark night of the soul mentioned in its own way in lots of places. This is sometimes called an existential crisis. rather than forms of depression that are more recognizable. Sometimes, depending on what you're studying, what you're into, you might hear this called positive disintegration. Positive disintegration. That's in psychology. Soul loss or descent to the underworld. I love that one. Descent to the underworld in shamanism. In Greek mythology, it is katabasis. And Carl Jung symbolically understood it as alchemy. So Carl Jung is the person that we talk about sometimes here who helps us with shadow work. Looking at that stuff that's so painful that we don't want to keep it in our eyesight. We want to keep it up in our conscious. So we put it in a closet, like we're going to look at it later, but it's just there for years. You might want to look up Carl Jung's shadow work. There's a talk we did about shadow work some weeks ago. But Carl Jung teaches us that if we pull things from the dark closet and we look at it, we're the alchemists. We change it from what it was to what it can be. The Dark Night of the Soul gets its name retroactively from an old poem by 16th century Roman Catholic priest and mystic, St. John of the Cross. He describes the anguish of separation of an individual's soul from God while imprisoned for his unconventional religious beliefs. I'm going to say that in a different way. This poem, this work, is about a separation. When you deep dive into the ocean, it feels like it's just you. You're not grabbing a bunch of friends and saying, hey, let's go on our scuba gear and see how deep we can go. No, it's you. And you often don't plan the trip. You find yourself there. You are down deep. You're shedding things away. You are evolving. And yeah, you're going to come back up. I want to remind you that as spiritual people who are made of spirit, you are not ever by yourself in this. So one of the things you can do to help you through sadness, depression, dark night of the soul is to recognize your helpers in skin, therapists, family, friends, pastors, and your helpers not in skin, your ancestors, grandma who passed, your creator, angels. And this is part of your evolution, realizing that no matter what you go through, you're actually not by yourself. And having faith that maybe you can't see who's helping you, but you can start to feel them. We're going to post that poem to Facebook after service today. I didn't read it because it's really old language, but you'll see it in a little bit. F. Scott Fitzgerald penned this famous line, in a real dark night of the soul, it's always 3 o'clock in the morning. Think about 3 o'clock in the morning. Dark night of the soul feels like it will be that way forever, and it won't. So are you feeling any of these things? Sadness, depression, maybe it could be dark night of the soul. How amazing. Can you recognize that when you feel these things, there is no brokenness? If you are cracking, you are the cement that's allowing the little tree to grow up. Right in between those cracks. You're cracking away to make room. Are you feeling your stuff? Are you feeling the stuff of the world, or is it both? And where do these things live? Sadness, depression, dark night of the soul. Where do they live in you? Are they in your skin? Are they in your liver? The energy, quite possibly, could be in some of your organs in your middle layer. But let's remember that you have 3 layers to you. We can unzip the skin, we can unzip the soul, and what's left is you. You as a divine being. That's who you truly are. And that part of you is perfect and complete and whole and abundant. And so sadness, depression, dark night of the soul don't originate from here. They originate from the soul, the next layer. And that layer is our learning layer. So again, what do you get to learn from sadness, depression, dark night of the soul? How is that growing your soul? And then how will you feel that in your body in your next layer? How will you take care of your beautiful body, your vessel that holds all this together? What does it need right now? Food, laughter, rest. Say yes. Be brave enough to say to yourself, oh, you're feeling sad. Okay, let's feel that. Instead of, stop it. Have a brownie instead. Ignore it. Pull up your bootstraps. Come on. That's the old book. We're in the preface of the new book, The New Way. And if you silence that voice that tells you to stop it, and you welcomed in the voice that said, I love you, what would you learn? What would you observe? We talked about your body feeling a lot of this stuff. We talked about how your spirit self is growing really, really tall. Yeah, you might be diving deep into the ocean for Dark Night of the Soul, but as you do that, your spirit self is growing. You might be 10 feet tall, and your body is 5 feet tall. And when that happens, you might not feel so grounded. So what grounding practices do you have in place that are healthy? I'm going to bring up food again because often we ground ourselves with some delicious Burger King and it works for about 5 minutes. And then our body for days is processing the chemicals. So what else could you put in your body that's grounding? Could it be a root vegetable? Instead of food, could you put a weight on your lap as you watch TV? As you meditate, could you put a couple blankets on your lap or a bag of rice? Could you make yourself heavier in a different way? Could you ground differently? Can you clear anything that's stuck to you energetically that no longer serves you? The sludgy energy that's associated with other people's sadness, other people's emotions, that's on you sometimes. And use water, soak in a tub, take a long shower, light some sage, get that off of you. And can you release and surrender stuff you don't need anymore? If indeed you're shedding things away, how do you shed them? What is the proper way? We're not recycling, we're shedding. Can you write that stuff down that you don't want anymore? Put it on a piece of paper and go outside and burn it? Sure you could. Take care, rest, go out in nature, eat good food, build a spiritual practice, and rely on others. One of the best things you can do when you're feeling this way is to rely on those to help you and to step in to help other people. This is an idea from Tony Robbins. This is about the formula of happiness. We can feel happiness or joy, if you'd rather, when we are in our element. We feel like we belong. When we are contributing. When we're transcending our individual selves so we can help somebody else. And what is this that happens when we come out of the dark night of the soul? It's a breakthrough. A breakthrough is closing the gap between where you were, where you are, and where you're going. I want to say to you that if you're hurting so much right now, and you don't want to tell somebody you know, I'm going to put the number for the suicide prevention hotline, the lifeline, here up on the feed and on the Facebook page. And I'd like you to screenshot it and just keep it. It might not be for you, but you might have that at the right moment, because we're interconnected. And you might have just what somebody else needs, and it might just be